So let's talk a little NFL, and we're going to talk about teams who did not make the playoffs last season, and then teams who did not make the playoffs last season that we think are going to make the playoffs this season. We're going to give one team from each conference each. Let's start in the NFC. I'll go my pick, your pick, and then we'll switch over to the AFC.
Sounds good.
All right, my pick for the NFC, I'm going to go with the Minnesota Vikings. A lot of people kind of make fun of the Vikings. They're kind of like a laughing stock. Kirk Cousins, people don't seem to like him. I know that he doesn't show up in primetime games, but this is a team with a lot of talent. I actually kind of like the Vikings. Not only that, I think their division stinks right now. I don't think the Packers are going to have a good year. I wouldn't be surprised if the Vikings actually win the NFC North. I just don't know who Aaron Rodgers is going to throw the ball to with Devontae Adams gone. I know back-to-back MVP, but I think a big part of that was because of Devontae Adams. They haven't found a replacement. Minnesota Vikings have Kirk Cousins. I know, like I said earlier, I know he doesn't show up in prime time. His numbers are still pretty good, and I got to trust the numbers. What's that?
So he's a good quarterback.
He's a good quarterback.
And listen, that's hard to find. That's hard to find. Like a good, solid quarterback is hard to find.
And sometimes all you need is a good quarterback to make the playoffs. You have Justin Jefferson, one of the best young receivers in the NFL. You got Adam Thielen. Their defense took a bit of a step back last year. I expect them to kind of get back on track this year. And the NFC in general is a weaker conference this year, I think. There's going to be space for a couple of not so great teams to get in the playoffs, whereas the AFC is going to be kind of stacked. Like there's going to be probably, I think by the time the playoffs come around next season, there's going to be a few AFC teams that don't make it that we're going to wish replaced a couple bad NFC teams that are going to sneak in. I think the Vikings might be one of those wildcard teams, but like I said earlier, I wouldn't be surprised if they win the NFC North. The Bears certainly aren't winning the NFC North. The Lions certainly aren't winning the NFC North. And the Packers, I think, are going to take a step back. So give me the Minnesota Vikings to return to the postseason in 2022.
That's interesting. And what's interesting about it is the fact that my pick is also from the NFC North. My thing with the Vikings is this is back-to-back years that they have immense talent on the offensive end. You have Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson.
Dalvin Cook.
And you don't end up with a winning record, right? You're not there. So I am, and then you also mentioned the defense taking a step back. I'm not on board with the Vikings this year, but it's not like a laughable pick how some people might treat my pick coming up, which is I think that the Detroit Lions are live to make the playoffs this year. I really do. I really think that the Lions are live.
You just love Dan Campbell, I feel like.
No, I'm not even like a huge. Listen, I like Dan Campbell. I like what he's done, but I'm not like a huge Dan Campbell fan. But I think I can't remember if it was last week or 2 weeks ago. We did a show where we were doing our dark horses to win the division. I picked the Jaguars. I was battling between who I wanted to go for my best bet, if I wanted to go for the Jaguars or the Lions to win the division, because when I look at the Lions, and I like them to make the playoffs, or at least have a better shot than the Vikings to make it. Their roster is sneaky, like they have some talent, right? You have Jared Goff at quarterback, then you have DeAndre Swift, Amon-Ra St. Brown, DJ Chark, and then later in the year, Jameson Williams is going to come back. You still have TJ Hockenson at tight end. Like you have a lot of pieces on offense that are actually like legit playmakers. And then on defense, you have Jeff Okudah in the back end. You have Aiden Hutchinson, who you just drafted. And this is a team that they had seven like non-wins because they had a tie. So they had seven non-win games that were like with a lot of close on the loss record. They were 11-6 against the spread last year, right? This is a team that is in games, and if you give them a little bit more talent, you buy into this culture, they have a chance. Now, the NFC is weird for me because I think that the 7 NFC playoffs last year will be the 7 teams that make it this year. However, if there was going to be a team that snuck in, I think it's going to be the Lions. I think they have a lot of potential this year, and I'm really, really riding high on them. After the draft, after free agency, I like the moves that they've done. And so, yeah, I think the Lions are alive to do it.
Two counterpoints. Number one, yeah, they played in a lot of close games, but they also had to finish with an average scoring margin of minus 8.4. So they were in a lot of not close games too.
I mean, yeah, listen, like when they lost ugly. And I understand that. But at the same time, there's so many games where like you have to expect some type of positive regret. Like you can't lose 7 field goal, 7 1 possession. One or two of those games have to go your way. If we take one of those blowouts and just bring them back, like you can start pulling wins here and there, especially with the talent that they've added. You go 3-13, that could easily turn into, we're heading into the last 3 weeks of the season, and you're what 7-7, right? There's a way for them to do it, and I think that last year they didn't necessarily have the pieces. DeAndre Swift also like was hurt for a couple games. If you get the health there, the Lions can do it. And just like you said, that division is more wide open than a lot of people think, because the Packers aren't going to be as good as they've been. So there is a path for them to make it.
Who would you rather have your guys at quarterback, Jared Goff or Kirk Cousins?
Kirk Cousins.
Right.
Kirk Cousins.
I like that. Case.
That's fair. That's fair. But I wouldn't shy away from the potential of the skill positions that Detroit has.
All right, fair enough. Let's move on to the AFC.
You hate that thing, and it's so funny. You hate it so much. That's so funny.
I will never have faith in the Lions as long as they're a franchise. Let's move to the AFC. You're not going to be surprised by my pick, and that is the Indianapolis Colts, who people were talking about were a Super Bowl contender around like week 10, week 11. And then they seemed like a lock for the playoffs. All they had to do was beat the Jaguars in the final week of the season, and they blew it. But now they get the 2022 NFL MVP, Matt Ryan, under center. Not only are they going to be a Super Bowl contender, they're going to be Matt Ryan's going to be an NFL MVP contender as well. I ranted about this, where was it, on the weekend or last week, or at some point I ranted about it. One of these videos we did, but it's time for the Colts to go on a little run here. They're probably in the weakest division in all of the NFL. The Titans will take a step back. The Texans still stink. The Jaguars still stink. The Colts, I mean, this is probably a chalky pick. Like when the odds come out for a team to make the playoffs, the Colts are probably going to be like minus 175 would be my guess, minus 200. But I took a little bit of a long shot with the Vikings. This is not going to be a long shot. The Colts will make the playoffs, and they will be considered a Super Bowl contender by the end of the year.
No, that makes sense. I agree with everything you said, except for the delusion that Matt Ryan is going to win MVP. But outside of that, great pick though. I agree with everything outside of that.
I wrote an article, or I was trying to write an article. It kept getting deleted by some. The internet wasn't working for me or something. But it's going to be up tomorrow morning. And as I'm writing it, Donovan, I was just kept thinking about you arguing with me when we were in New York about how Matt Ryan's not a Hall of Famer. So. It's a very passionate article. Keep an eye out for that tomorrow morning coming out in BetSided.
He's not. We kind of just, we kind of just want to throw it. And Joanne.
I am Matt Ryan's number one fan.
Yeah,
correct.
And it's nasty work. It's nasty.
Falcons fans know how good this guy is, and nobody does because no one else watches him because they never get on prime time. The media doesn't talk about the Falcons. Matt Ryan is right up there with Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning. He's right up there with all those guys. Statistically and
let's get to my pick. Let's get to my pick before we start spreading lies across the airways. I'm going to go with the Los Angeles Chargers to make the playoffs this year. Way back when the season had just ended, I jumped on the Chargers bandwagon to be a potential Super Bowl team. Going into this season, they were plus 2,000 to win the Super Bowl then. They're plus 1,500 right now. And after all of the acquisitions that they've made in the offseason, getting Khalil Mack, getting J.C. Jackson, this team, literally the only problem that they have is that they are the Los Angeles Chargers and that this franchise finds ways to lose.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. But if you look at everything on paper, the Chargers on offense, on defense have all the pieces to get the job done. They have a top who I would consider a top 5 quarterback, legitimately top 10 in Justin Herbert. And I made the point months ago, and I feel the same way right now. I think Justin Herbert has a chance to, at the end of the season, be the second best quarterback in the league behind Patrick Mahomes. I think he's that talented. He has Keenan Allen. He has Mike Williams. He has Austin Eckler in the backfield. The Chargers are going to, in my eyes, when I look at last year's playoff race and this year's playoff race, they are just going to take the spot of the Raiders. They should have been in the playoffs last year, and Brandon Staley wanted to galaxy brain everything, take a timeout, and the Raiders just looked up and said, "Oh, so we're not playing for a tie? Okay, fine, we'll go and win the game." And the Chargers just screwed themselves, but they should have been in the playoffs last year. I think they learned from that experience, aren't 9-8, and need a tie on the last game of the season to get into the playoffs. And I think that they replaced the Raiders in the AFC West, and they end up second in the AFC West at worst. And that's the play.
That was such an all-time moment that we are literally never going to see again in the history of the NFL. Is two teams who play against each other in the final week of the regular season can both advance if they tie. It goes to overtime. There's a chance for it to happen, and at the last second it doesn't. It's largely due to Brandon Staley calling that timeout. So we missed out on that, but I'm not going to disagree with that pick. I think the Chargers make the playoffs this year. I was looking at them as well when I was looking at my AFC, and Justin Herbert's too good to continue to miss the postseason. So. I agree with that one. They need to stop losing games that they're not supposed to lose, though.
Yeah, you can't go and lose to the Texans.
Yeah, you can't lose to the Texans.
In week 13, week 14, whenever it was. Like those things can't happen. But I think that they'll finally start to figure it out this year.